Digital India has now become the new normal. Major industry sectors have seen a drastic shift towards digital platforms in the COVID times. Over the past few years, Indian businesses have extensively adopted new age technology innovations across various sectors. In this panel discussion, industry experts will share inputs around redefining digital India in new normal. I would like to invite Mohammad Ujale, Senior Special Correspondent, ET Government. Platform is all yours, Ujale.
Hello and welcome to ET Government National Governance Virtual Summit. In this special panel discussion focus on redefining digital India in new normal, we'll try to explore the potential of technology under Digital India program to build a resilient digital Bharat. Also, how key component of IT infrastructure such as compute, storage, and networking could be bolstered to ensure delivery of world-class government services to citizens. To lead the discussion, today I'm joined by Mr. Jayesh Ranjan, Secretary Department of IT from Government of Telangana, Ms. Mugdha Sinha, Secretary Department of Science and Technology from Government of Rajasthan, Mr. B. Sundar, Secretary Department of IT from Government of Andhra Pradesh, Mr. Arun Sharma, Director DBT Mission, Government of India, and Mr. Kamal Arora, Senior Director Sales, Government, Dell Technology. I'll begin with Mugdha ma'am. Ma'am, what we have observed that during the pandemic, the government organization which had a kind of integrated technology platform, they were able to use those platforms to mitigate the challenge. Would you like to share based on your experience, how did you use technology in Rajasthan, the kind of work that you do during pandemic? If you could share your views, ma'am.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ojale, and a very, very warm welcome to all our fellow panelists and the audience. See, we have done this debate umpteen number of times and discussed our shared experience of how Rajasthan not just managed to do a very good job during the COVID in terms of the management of the COVID, and a lot of credit for being able to manage that, be it the immigrants who were coming into and going out of Rajasthan to various states which were equally affected by the pandemic, be it because it was the year end of the financial year closing of 2021, because the lockdown was announced on the 25th of March, 7 days short of the year ending. And we had to begin our new financial year in the lockdown. So I think the fact that we were, as the Department of Science and Technology, open and amenable and had both the hardware and the human resources, because the software was, of course, technology. We were able to integrate all the three and to begin our functioning from the 4th of April. That is when we started doing our series of science communication webinars, also starting doing a whole lot of work on the system which we had in the government, because we didn't want the office work to suffer, because that was a period of absolute lockdown. Also, the fact that outreach to the general, which was actually locked down, the interface between the civil servants and the civil society, as an instrument of governance.
Now I'll come to Mr. Jayesh Ranjan. Mr. Ranjan, as you heard, Mugdha ma'am was speaking, and she was telling about as to how she used technology and as to how it helped actually people mitigate the challenge in Rajasthan. Even in Telangana, there has been a lot of technology intervention that has happened. Would you like to share your experience as to how you use technology?
Yes, sure, Mr. Ujale, and uh, greetings to all the fellow panelists, greeting to all the attendees. See, if you look at the record of Telangana in terms of the rate of infections, the severity of infections, which is also reflected in the mortality rate, the fatalities rate, we are one of the better performing states. Of course, there is no competition here, but just on the basis of numbers, the new infections, the number of deaths, etc., has been very, very low in Telangana all throughout, right from March 2020. And one of the reasons, in my opinion, why we have been able to maintain such a good record is the use of technology. I won't claim that we have superior healthcare systems, or our healthcare workers are much different from those in other parts of the country. Those are not true claims, but I really believe that the reliance on technology in our state has helped us quite a lot. And I'll tell you about one particular technology which actually did us lots of service. So uh, as everyone knows, the severity started from March, and a large number of cases started getting reported. Testing also started in large numbers, and so on and so forth. So by the middle of April or so, we realized that we have got huge amounts of data, testing data, positivity data, infection zones, what are called containment zones, and also death cases, and so on and so forth. So we reached out to NASCOM. NASCOM and Telangana government jointly run a center of excellence on data sciences and artificial intelligence in Hyderabad. Right. So we reached out to them and asked them whether so much of rich data which is available, can that be used for any predictive analysis? Can something value to the government be developed out of that? And they were very kind of helpful. They put together a consortium of companies who have a very strong background in analytics, data sciences, AI, machine learning, etc. And using all these data sets that were available, a very strong algorithm was prepared using AI and ML, and it basically did two things for us. One was that it told us what is called situational awareness. Right. So right now, what is happening, which districts or which sub-districts are getting more number of cases, and so on and so forth. A kind of a dashboard. But more important than that, they gave us a predictive analytical tool which actually guides the state. It gives us prior information 2 weeks in advance, 15 days in advance. So we were able to use that tool to estimate where is the next big wave of infection going to strike, and obviously move more medical machinery, equipment, test kits, also move manpower. And that proved to be reasonably accurate. So that was one tool which helped us quite a lot in doing advanced planning and advanced preparation. Absolutely. COVID, when it came in March, etc., was a novelty for everyone. Everyone was in a way groping in the dark. So this is one example where technology really helped us, and we used the same predictive analytical tool which was made available to us to unlock also lots of economic sectors, including manufacturing, etc. In fact, I feel very happy and proud to share that much before unlock started nationally, in Telangana, we started unlocking industrial activities, IT parks, etc. from 1st of May itself. And we had that confidence because the predictive analytic tool that we had access to was very clear in telling us that no new infections, no mass outbreak is going to come in the industrial parks or in the IT parks. And now, of course, so many months have gone by. So in hindsight, we feel very happy and satisfied that we used technology and we had the courage to make judgments based on that technology. And eventually, all those judgments proved to be right.
Absolutely. I'll come back to you again. Before I go to Mr. Arora, I'll go to Mr. Sharma. Mr. Sharma, when lockdown was announced, was a everybody thought that the government service delivery is going to be disrupted, and initially there was some hiccup. Direct benefit transfer happens to be one of the biggest government service delivery, and there are a lot of people in far-flung area that depend on those benefit. Can you share your experience as to how you ensure that the beneficiary receive their money in their account and they are able to use those money in such a difficult time?
Thank you, Mr. Ujale. Yes, it was indeed a very challenging time for us, as it was for the rest of the country and, in fact, for the world. And the biggest challenge was, first of all, finding out who is where.
Right.
In times of migration, when people were leaving cities, going back to their native places, mostly villages, it was difficult to keep track of this movement and to enroll people in their respective programs. Now, it's easier said than done. It was, I think, the first response that the public had was, why is it so difficult to find people who are destitute, who are facing all these difficulties, and just help them in some way. But in terms of accountability, we just can't dole out benefits to anybody on the road.
Right.
There are programs that have been made, there are databases that have been created, and accordingly, we are bound by these schemes and these guidelines. So, sort of a meta scheme was devised called the Garib Kalyan Yojana, which was an amalgamation of several benefits or benefit programs that were concurrently running, except for uh, the transfer of 500 rupee into the Jan Dhan accounts of women beneficiaries.
Right.
Now, uh, this was done in a very unique manner. The Department of Economic Affairs uh, put this plan together. Then we got the Department of Rural Development to execute it through the Department of Financial Services. So there were 3 or 4 departments that came together
Right.
and executed this program flawlessly in a very, very short time. So there were 3 transfers made of 500 rupee each. The money is not substantial, 1500 rupees in total, but it was given to about 21 crore women beneficiaries. And that transfer happened almost instantaneously. When we made that transfer, the first tranche was, I think, within a matter of hours, this money had reached into 24 crore accounts. Now, the Jan Dhan accounts, there are about 41 crore Jan Dhan accounts, half of which, about 55%, are owned by women.
Right.
Now, this data that was available with the banks, all the banks were asked to prepare this data, share it with the SBI, that was selected as the nodal bank. Normally, when we transfer money, we use PFMS, which is Public Financial Management System, for all government transfers. But given the complexity of this, and given that SBI had the necessary expertise, this database was given to SBI, and they were asked to make these transfers, and it worked. Uh, the money went, and I think it was received also, except for a few complaints from a few places. Most transfers were made seamlessly.
Right.
Another program was to give food grains, additional food grains to people even without ration card. So that was kind of an open sort of intervention that we made, wherein anybody could go into the PDS, the fair price shops, and take their ration. We granted an exemption. Normally, now when you go to a fair price shop, they're all automated through POS devices, and every transfer takes place through Aadhaar authentication.
Right.
But given that COVID was the disease can be transmitted through touch, so we relaxed that condition, and the food grains were given to the beneficiaries without any biometric authentication.
Right.
And there were other programs that were put together in this. The total size of the intervention at that point was about 53,000 crore, which is still continuing. It's in some other forms. The larger thrust was completed within that time frame.
Absolutely.
But the assistance that is being given is still continuing.
Right. Right.
So overall, I think about 40 crore individual beneficiaries given some kind of assistance.
Absolutely.
And for us, these numbers may not be huge, but if you compare this anywhere globally,
Right.
with our kind of infrastructure, I think it was a
Remarkable work.
we all came together and executed this program.
Yes, yes. Mr. Sharma, I'll come back to you again. I'll go to Mr. Arora. Mr. Arora, during the pandemic, what we realized that, the government organizations were also trying to continue their business continuity plan. And they're actually, the IT infrastructure actually played a quite important role, what Mugdha ma'am earlier mentioned about it. Would you like to share based on your experience, because you work with different government departments, as to what kind of request you received, the kind of trend that you noticed during the pandemic?
Yeah, first of all, thank you very much for having me with the elite panel here. So really appreciate, and namaskar to everyone. I think our government did a fantastic job, I would say, to contain the pandemic, and what our lesson this pandemic has actually made us learn is that since we were ready, our technology adoption was happening in the country for quite some time. We were pretty much ready in terms of providing that connectivity, the DBT, which we just heard from Mr. Arvind. Jayesh talked about the connectivity across the state in terms of managing the pandemic, using the artificial intelligence, so on and so forth, to simulate things and and react to it so that it can be contained. And good to hear that the unlock was happening faster than the rest of the country. So all of this actually at the back end, technology was at the helm. The technology was not only helping to contain the pandemic, also it helped in developing or faster development of the vaccination, also the creation of the simulations of the so-called variants and how it is affecting and all of that. The entire machinery behind that, the ICMR and everyone was using it. So and if you look at the other areas where people need to be contained in their respective locations so that the lockdown is more effective, the administration is able to control that. So what we saw across the spectrum, whether it's law enforcement or finance, PFMS or NICs or Aadhaar or everyone, state, center, the digitization actually helped them to remain connected. And what I think is that work from home, while it was doing wonders at more of the corporate places, in government places, I think it was more of getting this machinery working 24/7 was a challenge. And we actually, thanks to the government, all the state and center to keep it running. If you see, even this was the time when we discovered that IT is actually the essential services.
Right.
And get the data center up and running all this time. And we got that support from the government to, get our folks on the road during the strict lockdown, also to make the things work for our government to maintain.
Right. I'll go to Mugdha ma'am again. Ma'am, earlier you were mentioning about some of the work that was done during the pandemic. Now I'll move to, since Mr. Jayesh Ranjan has mentioned about as to how he used predictive analytics to understand, at least have, a week prior visibility as to what is going to happen, the kind of challenge from a pandemic point of view the state is going to face. And once you have that kind of visibility, it really helps you in terms of planning. So in that light, I would like to understand, how do you look at next generation technology, such as AI, machine learning, robotics, and all, for effective public service delivery, as to how we can balance between repurposing our existing IT infrastructure and modernizing our IT infrastructure with the help of next generation technology. Your view now.
Thank you, Mr. Ojale. That's a very, very relevant question for the simple reason that technology has a very quick turnaround time, because technology is associated with innovation.
Right.
And the government's gestation time is slightly longer. So the challenge which governments will have working with technology, because technology is something that is going to be a driver of our governance architecture in times to come. COVID has only brought that realization and acceptability. One good thing that COVID has done is, enable people, even the geriatric population, to jump onto the bandwagon of technology, because technologies are very, very generational. So I think what you've mentioned is that, we will have to be able to devise a framework in the government. We are able to make quick and sweeping changes, and at times incremental, like we did during the COVID, jumping on from existing technologies, upscaling. But also we will not, and this is a problem sometimes in the government, because we get so awed by technology, and by the time we are able to copy cut and paste a model, we have another set of new technologies and you get awed by that. So I think consolidation of our efforts in terms of building a robust and very, very dynamic and fluid policy architecture is what will be required. We'll have to quickly review our policies and throw things out. I'm saying this why? Because 4 or 5 years back, there was a great fascination with 3D printing, right? We were not able to translate 3D printing into effective use. I remember we had sent out 3D printers to most of the schools for exposure of technology, but today we are not really talking of 3D printing. We moved ahead into other emerging technologies.
Right.
I think what the technologies which are here to stay are the technologies of data science, data analytics, which is going to be here because a lot of data is being collected, especially now because there is a focus on the general well-being and health. A lot of see, and technology is not about just government being prepared and you being able to use technology. It is also getting ready the accidentals and the accessories, which in this case is basically human resources. People should know how to use the technology. There should be an acceptability. Deep tech has not entered medicine where it is actually required because a lot of time is today being wasted, which can be taken up by artificial intelligence.
Right.
Pattern recognition is a thing on which a private sector is working. We need to anticipate. The job of the government today and as policymakers should not just to be able to do what is already there, but
Right.
to able to anticipate the new technologies which will be useful in times to come and be prepared. I'm just going to give you one example of my previous tenures as Secretary Food in the government of Rajasthan. We were able to computerize our entire food system, and we were issuing rations on the first of every month, connecting the state headquarters, the district headquarters, right down to the ration shop, and 4.5 crore people. So when the pandemic came, that system was available, right? And you could, even when you discarded the biometrics, you were still able to seamlessly allocate food to everybody who needed food because we had a database of 4.5 crore people with data analytics dashboard, which
Right.
actually tell you where all the ration needed to be sent wherever you had the containment zones. So I
Right.
think pre-preparedness to be able to absorb the emerging technologies is something that we have to focus. That requires both the hardware part of it, the infrastructure building, the interdepartmental connect. Because after all, what is science, research, innovation, and technology? It is about being able to connect the dots and connect the departments.
Yeah.
I see my department today, the Department of Science and Technology, as a service provider to other departments. Because we had an understanding, we had a system where we could use technology, we were able to provide support to 371 artists
Right.
by getting programs virtually done during the lockdown period,
Right.
and able to provide suka to them, especially in the time because COVID not only impacted people and we were not only doing koi bhuka na soye,
Right.
but artist bina rozgar ke, bina samman ke also
Right.
should not be reduced to penury. And
Fact.
also quality of life means being able to live life with
Right.
dignity. So I think technology enabled us to do all these things because we had a certain human resource preparedness. We had a certain hardware in terms of infrastructure which was available to do all this.
Right.
I think that is what will be required
Right.
in times to come. Blockchain and everything is just a process, secure
Absolutely.
system. But I think policy making to get all these integrated in the system will be.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'll come back to you again, ma'am. Before I move to Mr. Jayesh Ranjan, I'll go to Mr. B. Sundar. He has also joined. I would like to understand from you your experience during the pandemic as to how you use technology and how actually it helped you doing your work. Mr. Sundar.
Good evening, Economic Times. Thank you for giving us this opportunity to share our experience in this forum. I would like to divide our experience into two phases. The first, when COVID hit us, everything was centered on work from home. And 2 to 3 initiatives stand out in our state. One was the COVID dashboard, which helped the medical and the police department in trying to pinpoint how many were affected, how many contracted, how many the logistics. The second aspect was delivering medical services to the rural poor through a tele means, in the
Right.
sense avoiding complete contact and getting advices from remote locations from specialists. Yet another initiative which from the IT department side was enabling grocery delivery to homes. I mean, the persons, the citizens, they make a online indent for local grocers, and the local grocers take this on board and make uh, contactless delivery of essential groceries to the, and then the, though all these were small initiatives, it did of course help us to leverage technology for seamlessly delivering citizens. But the bigger challenge came when we wanted to serve the IT and electronic firms in our state. And
Now I'll move to Mr. Jayesh Ranjan. Mr. Ranjan, now I would like to understand from you. We understand that technology really helped. You talk about predictive analytics earlier. What should be the key focus for future IT investment for government organization? Because investment has become quite a priority sort of thing, wherein you have to choose and pick because the resources are limited.
In some other similar forums, I had mentioned that the post-COVID reality for the technology firms is something like the Y2K period.
Right.
If we recall the Y2K era, which was just before the year 2000, was a golden era for the Indian technology firms. We were able to really rise to the occasion, show to the world the prowess that Indian IT firms have. And we were able to solve a very critical problem which was facing everyone, all the enterprises, all the governments. And eventually, as we know, the Y2K challenge was very successfully met. There was no disaster in any part of the world. And Indian companies played a very important role. So I particularly feel that the post-COVID economic recovery process will require lots of digitalization. Whichever sector of economy you are in, whichever sector of society you are in, digitalization is going to be a very key factor for you, for your recovery, for your ability to bounce back and get back to the pre-COVID normal. And one difference between Y2K era and today is that the IT world has become much more democratic.
Right.
In those days, there were only some 4 or 5 top companies. I don't want to name names, but we all know who they are. And of course, they have done a great job. Because of them, India's reputation, India's image has multiplied manyfold. But today, the world has become much more democratic. There are hundreds of IT companies now. There are, of course, the large ones, but we also have mid-scale companies, small companies, even startups have amazing products and solutions and technologies which can meet the requirements of a post-COVID world. So I really feel that as a government, we should encourage the Indian companies to really get the maximum part of that cake. The post-COVID economic recovery digitalization cake should be made use of as much as possible by Indian companies. And of course, as I said, all shades of Indian companies. And it should be our responsibility to encourage the companies to be a facilitator as a government, to be able to enable them to really benefit from this opportunity. Lots of other thing which we are seeing, since you have spoken about investment. So I would like to add one more dimension, which is that one of the important concerns for many of the companies will be, regardless of whichever sector they operate in, is to find ways of saving on their costs. Because of the lockdown challenges, many companies have incurred some amount of loss. And tomorrow, when they start their operations in a full-fledged way again, one of their prime imperative will be to reduce cost. Right. And in the past also, many global companies, after they have set up their technology centers in India, they have found that they are able to get lots of tech services enabled through these centers without diluting on the quality at a much lower cost. Right. So India, I'm sure, is going to become a very important center for attracting investments from all kinds of companies.
Yes, absolutely. I'll come back to you again, Mr. Ranjan. Now I'll go to Mr. Arun Sharma. I would like to take your views on, you earlier spoke about as to how the DBT program was ensured and run smoothly during pandemic, despite a lot of challenge people facing. And since DBT happens to be a hardcore technology-driven project, you were able to do that. Based on those experiences, I would like to understand what should be the key focus now for an organization like yours in terms of the technology adoption down the line, let's say in 1 year, if you have to modernize overall things that you are doing right now, what would be those things?
That's a good question. And yes, there were many learnings from this experience for everybody. So two pain points we've realized. One was not having a database that we wanted. So the best or the ideal scenario would be to have a social registry or an integrated database of programs where you can identify who needs what.
Right.
Now, given the constraints in our data privacy policy, which is still yet to be officially released by government, uh, we use Aadhaar for identifying individuals, and Aadhaar itself has several restrictions for cross-purposing data, for using data for purposes other than the purpose limitation clause is explained in Section 29,
Right.
Section 30 of the Aadhaar Act, makes it very difficult for us to utilize the analytics that can be built over the data. But several interventions have been made in this direction, and that's what we are trying to do. It's still at a theoretical stage, but then that is something that we need to work upon. The Ministry of Labor and Welfare is creating a database for urban workers. This was the lot that
Right.
left en masse.
Mhm.
So that's one intervention that is happening, and this will happen at a multiple stages where you can check the eligibility, the enrollment, and the entitlement of various program sets and for various kind of beneficiaries in the program. The second part where we'd like to focus is on the payments bit. Uh, on one hand, in India, we have UPI and instant payments. On the other hand, we have the government payments, which are a little slower given the necessary constraints and the accountability that come in, and of course, the responsibility of handling public funds. But uh, just a small sort of factoid, we use something called the Aadhaar enabled payment system, which to disburse payments at the last mile, wherein business correspondents carrying POS terminals travel to villages, and then the beneficiaries, only using their Aadhaar number and their biometric, can withdraw their funds or deposit the funds. It acts as any banking channel. Before we began last year, we the membership of the AEPS was only about 29 banks.
Right.
As of today, there are 91 banks that are on the AEPS. So this is something that we pushed.
Mhm.
But at the same time, there were many transaction failures. Uh, the lack of standardization. There are the demand for this particular product is not very high. It's aimed as a low value product in the banking systems.
Right.
The maximum withdrawal limit is only 2,000 because
Right.
the category of people who use this uh, are vulnerable, can be fooled, and there are cases that were brought to our notice. So that's why the limit is small, but then that also adds to it restricts or it hinders innovations or improvements in this particular kind of system.
Right.
But having said that, the total share of APS payments or biometric payments or payments through these uh, POS devices prior to the pandemic was only about 2 to 3% of the cash withdrawals. If you look at the cash withdrawals across ATMs or other systems,
Mhm.
APS based payments were only about 2 to 3%. But towards the end of the year, they had reached about 10 or 11%.
Right.
So this was the increase that we saw, and this was the system that actually worked for disbursing or distributing cash across the country.
Right.
And again, to your earlier question, these would be the 2 points where we'll be focusing on.
Right. 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 Mr. B. Sundar, I'll come to you now. I'm going to Mr. Kamal Arora. Mr. Arora, Mr. Sharma was mentioning very important thing when reverse migration was happening, when people were going from city to their hometown. The biggest challenge that government faced, we did not have data and we were not aware who is migrant and how do you define migrant. And therefore, the policy, some of the help that could be provided, I mean, it took some time. That's what actually he was saying. So I would like to understand from you how in such a situation we can address this data challenge. And in your views, what should be the key technological focused priorities for the government organization in post-COVID world? We heard a lot of things around building resilient IT infrastructure, but how do we do that? What are the key pieces that needs to be ensured for doing that? If you could share your views.
Sure. No, this is a very, very important question. I think nothing more important than the data and data sharing across the platforms. And I think all the elite speakers have mentioned about it in some shape and form, that how to integrate the data which is coming from various facets, whether it's Aadhaar, whether it is from Shram Mantarlay, whether it's coming from other banks, which is collaborating there. I think the most important thing in this situation would be, and that's where the country should be looking at, and government specifically, on data protection. While the bill is there in the parliament on that, but how you are, once you are protecting your data completely and you have the safeguard measures on that, the second thing comes, once you know that it's protected, now how to exchange between various data agencies who are the owner of this, whether it's through amendment of laws or whatever is required to be done. Aadhaar has a fantastic data. So is with banks, so is with others, right? How do you, NHA is going to build another data for entire, Ayush Mantralaya and healthcare systems to be built up in the country as per the new digital health missions policies, right? So the key would be, once you have the data protection bill, how do you exchange the data within the organizations so that the benefit can come, and all these, even migrant laborers or students or people who need to get benefit out of this should get mapped. And with a click of button, that should happen. The other very important thing would be that how do these organizations are protected from any kind of a cyber attack? Because that's something we are seeing is becoming very, very serious issues, wherein there are news always to, the sites are being hacked or ransomware things are happening. So in such situation, there should be a mandated process in auditing how organizations protecting their data, and when and how they can bring back entire business up to speed in eventuality that happens. Nobody can fully stop, 100% that this will not happen. But the key is how quickly you can bring back your business to work for business. That exactly what displayed in pandemic management also, and that is what exactly will help us as a country to come back onto the business by every organization, if that kind of a protection is always viewed with that seriousness in government organization.
Now I'll go to Mr. B. Sundar. You heard Mr. Arora, Mr. Sharma is speaking about as to how data is important and how actually data could have helped initially had we had, a kind of segregation of the data in terms of the population, who is migrant, where actually he is headed, all those things. You were earlier sharing about your experience in Andhra Pradesh as to how you use technology to mitigate the challenge. Can you share your views on that, sir?
Continuing with what I was explaining, when we focused on the IT firms and figuring out how to help them during this COVID crisis, because from what I see about the theme about this, we are trying to figure out what will be the new normal and the technologies that will help in the new normal.
Right.
We were trying to figure out a way from the IT department side on how we are going to help them. We came out with a very surprising finding, and that only around 70%, I'm talking about the period June 2020, because we carried out this empirical study in June 2020 when the pandemic was at its height. Almost we were clocking around 80 to 85,000 cases per day all over the country. And AP was contributing around 10,000 live cases per day. And during this juncture, we found that electronic firms were not that keen to adopt WFH.
Right.
IT firms, to a certain extent, that is around 60 to 65% of them, were keen to adopt W work from home, but the rest of them were mainly into the fintech areas, were
Right.
at all comfortable with work from home normal. And with this stumped findings, we were just wondering what will be our next steps in helping these people who are away from their workplaces, but struggling in tier 2 and tier 3 towns of our city. And then we came across that many of the because of the n number of graduates and a huge IT workforce in that AP almost pedals almost
Right.
year by year, we found that there were a lot of gig workers, gig workers in our state who were doing projects while not being tied entirely to an organization, and we
Right.
had something for them. So we devised a set of incentives like hardware and software per person, subject to a certain number of
Right.
conditions, ensuring that at least whatever they contribute by way of tax comes to our state's economy. So provisioning for gig workers was one strong focus which we took, given the peculiarities of our
Right.
state. Then the next major finding which we we came across with respect to the new normal was when we interacted with the State Higher Council for Higher Education
Right.
during the recruitment for the 2021 engineering graduates.
Mhm.
We had very with huge ambitions. We had floated courses like artificial intelligence, industrial IoT, data analytics into the engineering curriculum. We offered them a separate engineering curriculum for the science and engineering graduates, with the hope that what with COVID-19 spewing out all these hot technologies, there will also be takers for them. And so we thought we will be guessing their demand, and we started floating courses through the AP State Higher Council of
Right.
Education. And there we came across another stumbling block, that all the high rank holders in
Mhm.
both Telangana state as well as the AP state, they were not at all keen on taking up these new technologies for their engineering courses. Main
Right.
reasons could be two. One is that the new technologies do not have so much of course rigor to substantiate a 4 year or a 5 year engineering course. The top rank holders were still opting for traditional disciplines like CSC, electronics, to some extent IT, but they were more comfortable with civil and mechanical than go for a full-fledged course in IoT or cybersecurity. And
Right.
when we tried to find out the reasons, they said that these are all electives which we can always take in the third and the fourth year. That means whatever we are trying to build with COVID as a focus, either in the education sector or we're trying to serve IT and electronics, we are our success has only been in part. Our success has only been in part,
Right.
and
Right.
we have not fully understood what the new normal is going to be.
Right. Right. Right.
And I would like to conclude by one more strong observation, that the entire discipline of artificial intelligence and machine learning, which is what is fueling the rest of the other technologies, we have not been able to make a dent in trying to either hasten up clinical trials in the medical field itself, because we are seeing how the snail's pace is going on in
Right.
trying to make a vaccine for this. We have not been able to make a dent there. Much of the success as a IT as a discipline will perhaps happen only if we are going to make some difference in
Mhm.
hastening up vaccine
Right.
trials,
Right.
helping the medical community to come up with a cure for pandemics like the COVID-19, and one more, and the various variants that are emerging in
Right.
both
Right.
country as well as
Absolutely.
in the rest of the
Absolutely.
world.
Absolutely.
Thank
I
you.
completely agree with you, Mr. Sundar. Mugdha ma'am also earlier mentioned about, the deep take is yet to go deep into the medical, and possibly that is a place where there is a lot of role to play, a lot of automation can happen, a lot of precision could be enhanced. We have completely exhausted our time. So I really thanks Mr. Jayesh Nandan, Ms. Mugdha Sinha, Mr. Arun Sharma, Mr. Kamal Ora, Mr. B. Sundar for sharing your views and telling us as to how your organization used technology during pandemic, how actually it helped you, and the kind of trend that you look at as to how the kind of work that we should be doing down the line to make our IT infrastructure more resilient, more emergency friendly, and also what should be the key priorities for the government organization down the line in 1 year. So we really appreciate your time. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you everyone for a detailed discussion, many learnings and takeaways. Ladies and gentlemen, keep spreading this knowledge on social media using the hashtag ETNGVS. Stay tuned.